The ocean is an incredible place. Let's keep it that way. Join us as we hunt for sustainable seafood. Your seafood choices matter for the future of ocean health. Hey, it's Sarah Curry with Soraya Films. In this episode, we're speaking with two commercial fishermen in the Florida Keys harvesting one of Florida's iconic species, the spiny lobster. Commercial fishermen are increasingly rare and face many challenges. What will it take to help maintain the culture of commercial fishing in the Keys?
Earlier in the season is always going to be better. Makes more money, and that's why we do it.
Just getting everything going here, getting all my machines turned on.
Weather conditions are critical. It's entirely visual. It's more like hunting than fishing.
Beautiful northeast wind, which makes it nice and cool. The water is perfectly blue. The dolphins should be swimming around here most of the day.
If I put 50 or 60 lobsters in the boat in a few hours, I go home a happy man.
How many did we get in that line? So we did about a pound a trap. We got 23 lobsters out of 25, which at this particular juncture is not bad.
They're not everywhere, but where they are, there's a lot of them. You're rolling the dice.
The more you know in this business, the less you really do know.
It's my absolute favorite thing to do. There is nothing in this world I would rather be doing than bully netting.
It doesn't get any better than this time of day or this time of year. And you come out here on the boat and you don't believe in God, I'll say, hey, I'll challenge you on that.
The Keys, most people wouldn't believe it, but it's actually kind of like a tropical Alaska. You know, you have a culture and an economy that's based on fishing and drinking. I am from Alaska, so I always felt very much at home down here.
In the U.S., small-scale commercial fishermen like Jesse are few and far between. With a small boat, a couple nets, and a strong headlamp, Jesse goes out at night to harvest local spiny lobster during the season, which is from August to March. But he's the exception. Most commercial lobsters harvested in South Florida are caught in traps, in deeper water with bigger boats.
It's nice back here out of that east wind. Nice and glassy.
My wife and I started the business when she was 15 and I was 16, and we built traps in the backyard and started fishing. We pulled 300 traps a day by hand that we had back in those days. Things have changed a lot, but a lot of things have stayed the same.
From building traps in his backyard to operating 7,000 traps a year, Gary and his wife spent the last 50 years growing one of the largest spiny lobster operations in the Southeast United States. Even though the spiny lobster fishery is relatively small compared to the better-known large-clawed American lobster from the Northeast, it's big business here in Florida. Gary and his crew are pulling traps that have been in the water for a week or two. And today, although she often captains one of his other boats, his daughter Kelly is on the crew operating the winch on deck. After years of observing the fishery, Gary sets his traps in different areas depending on where he thinks the lobsters are most likely going to be. Depending on the time of year and water conditions, lobsters can be found in shallow waters or deeper waters. These factors influence the method of setting and retrieving traps. Some traps are all connected to one line, This one had about 25 on there. When ready to harvest, they're pulled up with a winch on the side of the boat, then cleaned, baited, and stacked. "90% of the fishery is single traps, marked by a buoy at the surface, and these are pulled in at the back of the boat. The buoys are hooked and the line is attached to a winch. Whichever method is used, Gary is careful so he doesn't damage sensitive corals and sponges. When the traps are pulled on board, several things are happening. Any legal-sized lobsters are removed and put into a live well, and any egg-bearing females are thrown back to sea. While some legal fish may be kept, most bycatch is released. Invasive lionfish are often found in traps, which local restaurants love. The traps are then prepared to be put back out to sea. They're cleaned and loaded up with goodies to entice more lobsters to come in. Spiny lobsters are social creatures, so fishermen regularly throw the traps back with at least one live lobster already inside. The traps are also baited with various foul-smelling animal parts that will maintain its stench underwater into the night.
So generally speaking, the opening of the season is the best lobstering will be all year. Now there are occasions where there will be a migration, what we call a walk of lobsters in a specific area. And that can be very productive. Unfortunately, they're very unpredictable.
Bully netting is mainly done recreationally, but still holds a small percentage of the commercial industry. Because for people like Jesse, who want little overhead and a small piece of the pie, it's perfect.
My goals as a commercial fisherman here have nearly been met. I keep it small, I keep it manageable. Keep it small, keep it all. I don't have to hire a crew, which is nice.
Bully netting boats are unique. Since the lobsters are caught at night in shallow waters, it's advantageous that the boats have a shallow draft, flat bottom, with bright lights mounted on the side. The helm of the boat is almost always constructed on the bow of the boat on a slightly elevated platform, so that the fishermen have a 360-degree view of the water below. There's certainly a technique to it, but since Jesse has been doing it for 6 years, he makes it look easy.
It's basically dip net, but it's angled at 90 degrees. So you slam the ring down over the top of the lobster freaks out and swims into the net. And as soon as he crosses a circle, you just pick him up. Best analogy I have for that is like working a plunger, right? Straight up, straight down, just like that. The surface tension of the water, the more stable that is, the better your visibility is going to be. And if you can't see the lobsters, they're impossible to catch. Good, perfect nights like this is as good as it gets. I would rather be doing this than anything, so I'll just stay out till the sun comes up, just grinding away. Spiny lobster earns its name because it's covered in these forward-facing spikes, right? That's its defense mechanism, to make themselves as uncomfortable to take a bite out of as physically possible. So they've got these horns, which, if you can see, are sharp as hell, and they'll buck. The sound that you're hearing when they buck is actually up here in their face. Friction between the two plates of bone, and it's how they communicate.
Our lobster industry's been strong for 30 years. We have the most highly regulated industry in the world. We have 5 months closure for spawning time. We have sizes on the lobster. We restrict the type of traps that we use in the different places. We're very diligent about protecting our small lobsters. We're diligent about protecting the spawning stock. And The fishery with the limited entry and everything, we've reduced the traps from 1 million to 400,000, so it's very stable. The only thing we don't have control over is, number one problem is water quality. Being here and seeing what's happened to the Keys in the last 50 years is mind-boggling. The water is nice and clear and beautiful today. The seagrass has been decimated from die-offs and from algae blooms and every other thing.
Water quality is a big deal down here. South Florida water has basically been treated like a dumpster for decades. And we're seeing some effects from that. Climate change it definitely has impacts on the fisheries.
Even though the fisheries are well managed and we're working to navigate a changing environment, a less talked about problem is the lack of affordable housing here in South Florida, especially in the Keys. This is even more severe for the crew on commercial fishing boats like Gary's.
The biggest limiting factor to any business right now is finding housing. And workforce housing, we don't have it. And there's none out there. And I don't know where it's coming from. We're not planning for the future whatsoever here. This has become a very elitist society in here, in the Middle Keys. The affordable housing they build, you have to make $50,000 a year to qualify to even be in it. I mean, our guys don't make that kind of money. We don't make the kind of money to pay the guys that kind of money. They can't even qualify for most of that stuff. We need apartment complexes that are affordable, $1,000, $1,500 a month. Their affordable housing here is $3,000 or $4,000 a month. If I didn't have the trailers where my guys are staying that I own, I'd have to sell out pretty much because it's impossible to find people to work and they wouldn't have a place to live.
These are all issues that impact Florida's lobstering industry, and local governments in the Keys are working to address these problems so that the Keys can continue to have a commercial fishing industry. But where do our Florida lobsters even end up?
The majority of the lobsters harvested in the Keys end up in China, alive. We bring them in alive, happy and healthy in a live well system. From there, they get transported to some holding warehouse facility of some sort, probably in Miami. And from there, they catch a flight to China. And China will pay more for a lobster, for a Florida lobster, than anyone else in the world. They just love them.
By Christmas, normally the fishing slows way down. The Chinese market, though, goes way up. We can catch half as many lobsters and make twice as much, because usually we've had the Chinese pay as much as $22, $23 a pound for lobster, whereas right now the price is around $8 a pound for lobster.
Live export of lobsters to China is a huge boom, but what happens if it's a bust?
Tom Matthews moved to the Florida Keys in 1989 to work with Spiny lobsters. He's currently the lead lobster biologist at FWC, where he conducts research on how to maximize the efficiency of the lobster fishery. When he started in the 90s, the fisheries had 1,500 fishermen, and there are about 750,000 traps in the water. Now, there are about 400 working commercial fishermen and 450,000 traps in the water.
So the fishery is actually contracted on its own. The stresses on the lobster population have more to do with society. Labor forces, gentrification, the cost of labor, and the cost of property. There will be lobsters out there unless something truly catastrophic happens, just like there have been lobsters here for the last 50 or 100 years. But the important thing is to get more value out of those lobsters. If you just give them a little time, they'll grow bigger, and those bigger lobsters have more value. The bigger lobsters also have a chance to reproduce then, producing millions and millions of eggs. Our spawning stock is upstream, places like Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras. So regional management of spiny lobsters is critically important. It is one population. A harvest of lobsters in the Florida Keys might vary by as much as 100% every year. A bad year might be 3.5 million pounds caught by the commercial fishermen. A good year might be 5.5 million pounds. That's sort of the natural variation. Understanding international markets is difficult. So a thing we would love to do in Florida is also to diversify the market. People are much more willing to pay more for a locally caught lobster than in imported lobsters. Direct sales to restaurants and things is usually a great way to improve the value of fishery. And certainly in the Florida Keys, our people who come here and visit as tourists or even locals like to eat local seafood.
Probably about 350 pounds of fish and some select lobster. Some 2-pound lobsters. Happy, lively. Let's see, these are the bottoms and the lions. So if I stick my hand in here, you got about 50 pounds of lionfish.
Lionfish are often found in lobster traps as bycatch, which is why during lobster season you'll see them on more menus. Chefs love them as they're delicious cooked many ways, and consumers love them because eating them supports conservation efforts. As an invasive species, it's one of the best seafoods to eat in South Florida.
In the Florida Keys, this is a small community. All of us know our local fishermen. These are the people whose children go to your schools, who play sports. So to support those local fishermen is a vibrant part of our economy. Now, it's also the culture. Fishing is the thing to do in the Florida Keys.
Anybody in this industry has to be a fighter. I mean, we're out there working in one of the hardest industries in the world. We have a lot of investment, a lot of money invested in it. We have to be very attentive to our environment. And that's why I'm so strongly recommend any commercial fisherman or anybody in this industry to get involved in the fisheries management, because the bylaws of Organized Fishermen of Florida and the bylaws for Florida Keys Commercial Fishing Organization is to preserve and protect the natural resources of the state of Florida. And nobody wants to see us just fish the last lobster out or the last crab out. That's just silly. When you hear, I call it the got miner's attitude. That's not the commercial fisherman that I know. So if they are, they need to go away. I guess that's about it.